Hello students, welcome to the session on environment movements. The objectives of this session are to study the concept of environment movement, to understand the need of environment movements, and to familiarize ourselves with various types of environment movements in India. Let us first understand the term movement. A movement is defined as a sustained collective action over time. Such action is usually directed against the state and takes the form of demanding changes in state policy or practice. Any spontaneous disorganized protest cannot be called a movement. A movement is a collective action which is marked by some degree of organization. This organization may include a leadership and a structure that defines how members relate to each other, make decisions and act on them. Those participating in a movement have shared objectives and ideologies. These movements are agents of change. They urge us to place institutions and the law under the surveillance of citizen groups and initiatives. They make democracy more dynamic and effective. They urge us to fight growing social inequalities, the isolation of the underprivileged, and the segregation of the minorities, which are essential aspects of any democracy. New movements in India mobilize large masses of people, organize movements that cut across political and social barriers, and create socio-political actors who utilize direct action techniques, both legal and illegal. They raise new questions about basic needs, relationship between state and civil society, gender and social equality, transformation and survival. The environment movement is one such new socio-political movement. Now let's understand the term environment. Environment is the very basis of our life, and its destruction leads to destruction of human life. Today, ecological issues are of concern for the entire world with the rise in global temperature and uneven weather patterns. The environment continues to deteriorate. The level of air pollution has risen drastically, rivers are dead, levels of groundwater have dropped, and there has been a rise in the problem of untreated waste, decline in forest and animal species endangered. Due to these events, there has been a worldwide concern for environment conservation and protection. An environment movement is thus a social movement for protection, conservation and improvement of the natural environment in which we exist. Such a movement questions the existing notions of development and progress and demand greater political rationalization of everyday life. It stresses sustainable management of natural resources and policy changes for conserving these resources. According to environment groups, decisions on technology choices are often taken in alignment with the demands of multinational corporations, endangering the interest of the common people and their survival strategies. Issues like forest degradation, soil erosion and floods are raised in environmental debates. These groups illustrate the exploitative character of modern technology, which destroys sustainable traditional practices and advocate conservation, sustainability and balanced growth. Environment movements are thus diverse and complex. They are formally organized as well as, in certain cases, informal organization is observed. They are local, national and global in nature. They may be concerning issues of local forest, drought or concerning the global issues of rise in air temperatures and water levels across the globe. It may also be concerning issues of local species of birds and animals to the global issue of tsunami as well as earthquakes. Now let's look at the history of environment movements. Many historians find the publication of Rachel Carson's Silent Spring in 1962 to be an appropriate indicator for the start of the modern American environmental movement. In the decade of 1960s and 1970s, in India, the environmental movement concentrated its attention on pollution and successfully pressurized Congress to pass measures to promote clean air and water. In the end of 1970s, the movement progressively addressed environmental threats created by the disposal of toxic waste. At the end of the century, the environmental agenda also included worldwide problems as ozone depletion and global warming. In the Western countries, the environment movement has arisen chiefly out of a desire to protect endangered animal species and natural habitats. In India, however, human survival, social justice and sustainability gave rise to environmental movements. The modern environment movement started with the Chipko movement in India. The 1970s and 1980s saw a wide spectrum of natural resources conflict in India. Conflicts over forests, fish pastures, siting of large dams as well as unregulated mining. In this framework, Gitanjay Sahu stated that in India the environmental movement has grown rapidly over the last 3 to 4 decades. It has played a key role in 3 areas such as 1. In creating public awareness about the importance of bringing about a balance between environment and development, and 2. In opposing developmental projects that are inimical to social and environmental concerns, and lastly, in organizing model projects that show the way forward towards non-bureaucratic and participatory community-based natural resource management systems. The major reasons of the emergence of environmental movements in India include control over natural resources, false developmental policies of the government, socio-economic reasons, environmental degradation, destruction and the spread of environmental awareness and media. Professor Ramchandra Guha lists the 3 events which occurred within the country in 1973 that expedited discussion on environmental issues in India. Firstly, in April, the Government of India announced the launching of Project Tiger, a determined conservation program aimed at protecting the country's national animal. Indian conservationists, exhilarated and assisted by the international agencies such as World Wildlife Fund and International Union of the Conservation of Nature, were contributory in bringing pressure on government to create a network of national parks and sanctuaries all over India to protect rare wildlife. Secondly, the publication of an article in Economic and Political Weekly in March 1973 entitled A Charter for the Land, authored by B.B. Vora, a high official in the Ministry of Agriculture, which drew attention to the extent of erosion, waterlogging and other forms of land degradation in the country. The Department of Environment was set up in 1980 and a full-fledged Ministry of Environment and Forest was formed 5 years later in 1985. Thirdly, on March 27, 1973, in Mandal, a remote Himalayan village, a group of peasants stopped a group of loggers from felling a stand of trees by hugging the trees. This event flashed many protests through the 1970s, jointly known as the Chipko movement. This movement raised basic questions relating to the ecology, equity and social justice and promoted lively debate and action throughout the country. The main environmental movements in India are Chipko Andolan, Save the Bhagirathi, Stop Tehri Project Committee in Uttar Pradesh, Save the Narmada movement, which is also known as the Narmada Bachao Andolan in Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. Also included are the youth organizations and the tribal people in the Gandhamardhan Hills whose survival is directly endangered by development of bauxite deposits, the opposition of the Baliapal and Bhograi test range in Orissa, the Apikko movement in the Western Ghats, groups opposing the Kaiga nuclear power plant in Karnataka, the campaign against the Silent Valley project, the Rural Women's Advancement Society formed to reclaim wasteland in Bankura district and the opposition to the Gumti Dam in Tripura. Besides this, local movements are working against deforestation, waterlogging, salinization and desertification in the command areas of dams on the Kosi, Gandak and the Tungabhadra rivers and in the canal irrigated areas of Punjab and Haryana. The special characteristics of Indian environment movements are their adherence to the concept of non-violence. All the mentioned movements have seen Gandhiji's way of demanding state action. Protests are in the form of satyagraha, silent marches, petition drives which have all been done without violence from the protesters. Another significant aspect of these movements is their integrative social effect on the regions where they are active. They cut across social and cultural cleavages that might have been expected to be divisive. They unite people who differ by sex, age, religion, ethnicity, caste, class and region by stressing shared interest in saving the environment. Women have been prominent as leaders and participants. The high status of women in the Himalayan area and among the tribal group of the Narmada Valley, including unusual freedom of action and movement that accompany their role in the subsistence economy, is partially responsible for their prominence in the environmental movement. Besides, women have the most to lose from deforestation as the gatherers of firewood and fodder leaves, as well as the carriers of water, and they know that the flow from mountain spring depends on an adequate forest cover. The women are accustomed to responsibility and leadership for community survival. Their work involves them directly and daily with forests and natural resources. They are alert to environmental changes and they respond readily and knowledgeably to the need to protect the environment. Both young and old participate in these movements. Student participants come not only from Uttarakhand but also from the plains and are among the most active Chipko workers. They bridge the difficult gaps of age, class, region and social experiences as they join in a common cause. Likewise, the Save the Narmada and Silent Valley movements have drawn grassroots support among urban intelligentsia and through linkages like-minded groups in India. The interrogative nature of the movement cuts across ancient and powerful ethnic barriers. The two ethnic groups that populate Uttarakhand, the Paharis and the Bhotiyas, occupy land at different altitudes, but they joined to protect their forests. The movement also has interrogative effects at the national level by bringing together people from various regions of a country and by providing a prototype of method and organization for similar problems elsewhere in India. In 1983, the method pioneered in Uttarakhand was adopted in Karnataka, in the Western Ghats, by farming people to oppose reckless illegal logging. Known there as Apikko, the movement encountered commercial exploitation and official apathy similar to those found in Uttarakhand. During the past century, there has been a progressive encroachment by the state on the rights and privileges of the people to forest resources. The people have resisted it in various parts of India, mainly through the Gandhian non-cooperative method of protest, well known as Forest Satyagraha, that was initially applied to environmental concerns by the Chipko movement during the 1970s. This movement had its origin in the politics of the distribution of the benefits of resources, but it has expanded to include the distribution of ecological costs. Let us discuss in detail as to what was the Chipko movement. In the 1970s, an organized resistance to the destruction of forest started in Uttarakhand. This resistance was followed by people throughout India and came to be popularly known as Chipko Andolan. The name of the movement comes from the word Chipko, which means embrace, as the villagers hugged trees and prevented contractors from felling them. Such a similar movement was started by the Bishnoi community in Rajasthan in the 18th century. In 1973, the first Chipko action spontaneously took place in a small village in the upper Alaknanda valley, and it spread to the many districts in the hills of Uttar Pradesh. The movement began when the forest department refused permission to the villagers to fell ash trees for making agricultural tools, and at the same time allotted the patch of land to sports good manufacturers for commercial purposes. This naturally angered the villagers and they protested against the government decision. Later, larger issues of ecology and economy got raised. The villagers demanded that no forest exploiting contracts should be given to outsiders and the local community should have effective control over natural resources like land, water and forests. The movement also took up issues of landless forest workers and asked the government for guarantee of a minimum wage. Women participation was one of the highlights of this movement. The Chipko movement gathered momentum in 1978 when the women faced police firings and other tortures. The then State Chief Minister Hemwati Nandan Bahuguna set up a committee to look into the matter, which eventually ruled in favour of the villagers. This movement was led by a Gandhian activist Sundarlal Bahuguna, who coined the Chipko slogan, "Ecology is economy." The Chipko protest achieved victory in 1980 with a 15-year ban on a tree felling in Himalayan forests of the state by an order from the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. The second popular movement is the Narmada Bachao Andolan. Narmada is the largest westward flowing river in India. An ambitious development project was launched in the Narmada Valley in central India in the 1980s. The project consisted of 30 large, 135 medium-sized and 3,000 small dams to be constructed on the river and its tributaries that flow across the states of Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and Maharashtra. Sardar Sarovar project in Gujarat and Narmada Sagar project in Madhya Pradesh were two of the biggest multipurpose dams planned under the project. The Narmada Bachao Andolan under the leadership of Medha Patkar began with an objective of saving Narmada, opposed the construction of these dams and questioned the very nature of the ongoing development projects in the country. Though Sardar Sarovar project would benefit huge areas of Gujarat and the adjoining states in the terms of availability of drinking water, water for irrigation, generation of electricity and increased agricultural production, the process of construction would have submerged 245 villages from these states. It would require displacement, relocation and rehabilitation of 2.5 lakh people from these villages. The woes of the project affected people were taken up by the Narmada Bachao Andolan. The movement questioned the nature of decision-making process that led to such projects. The movement also insisted that the local self-government must have a role and a say in such decisions, and they should have effective control over natural resources like land, water and forests. The Andolan, led by prominent activist Medha Patkar, turned into an international protest, gaining support from NGOs all around the globe. The protesters agitated through media, hunger strikes, massive morchas and rallies, and through screening of several documentary films. They also tried pressurizing the World Bank to withdraw the loan extended to this project. The point of rehabilitation has been now recognized by the government and the judiciary. A comprehensive national rehabilitation policy was formed by the government in 2003, which is an achievement of the Andolan. However, its demand to stop construction of the dam was severely criticized by many. The Supreme Court of India also upheld the decision of the government to go ahead with the construction of the dam while instructing proper rehabilitation. There have been numerous other movements besides these two movements in India. There also have been individual protests and individual initiatives in different parts of the country for saving the ecology. One such initiative is the Pani Panchayat experiment initiated by Vilasrao Salunke. Vilasrao Salunke was born in Dhulgaon village in Sangli district of Maharashtra. An electrical engineer by education, he was deeply concerned about natural resource management issues in rural areas. Therefore, he started his experiment in equitable water distribution with active involvement and participation of local communities at village Naigaon, district Pune in Maharashtra, which popularly came to be known as Pani Panchayat model. He asserted the first right of the village or group of villages over the water from their stream or river, and its equal distribution and sustainable use of water was stressed. It gave the right to water to the landless, women and Dalits in the villages and banned water-intensive crops like sugarcane. Pani Panchayat focuses on enabling equal distribution of water to all of its people in the village through sustainable development of the watershed to improve the quality of life of its inhabitants and participating communities through education, training and active participation in sustainable production activities. Developing holistic farming system through the use of organic farming based on scientific techniques are a very successful remedy to the economic and ecological crisis endangered by green revolution. To summarize, in contemporary world, there have been numerous grassroots environmental movements launched against the development activities that have endangered the ecological balance. Environmental movement can be elaborated as a social and political movement which is concerned with the conservation of environment as well as enhancing the state of environment. It can also be known as green movement and conservation movement. During the past 20 years, people in various regions of India have used non-violent action movements to protect their environment, their livelihood and their ways of life. These environmental movements have emerged from the regions of Uttar Pradesh to the tropical forests of Kerala and from Gujarat to Tripura in response to projects that threaten to dislocate people and to affect their basic human rights to land, water and stability of the ecological system. They share certain features such as democratic values and decentralized decision making with social movements operating in India. The environmental movements are slowly progressing towards defining a model of development to replace the current resource-intensive model that has created severe ecological instability. Thank you.